All right, today we're in section 3.5, histograms. There's two parts to histograms. There's a frequency table that I have to set up first, and the frequency table gives me the data that I need to set up my histogram. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our first frequency table. Now, to set up a frequency table, so you're going to set this up on your graph paper. All right, so setting up a frequency table, you're going to have three columns. You label your first column by your intervals, your second column by your tallies, and your third column by your frequency of those tallies. Now, the intervals will always be given to you. Won't necessarily be the case as you move into the higher maths, but for this year, I'll give you the intervals, and then you just have to figure out the tallies from there. All right, so in this frequency chart, I'm going to give you the intervals of 0 to 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 to 15. Now, all these numbers that I'm writing at the bottom, these are the numbers in my data set. And what I need to do is, I need to figure out how many numbers, so I'm going to count how many numbers occur in the interval of 0 to 3, and 0 and 3 count. How many numbers occur in the interval of 4 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 to 15. All right, so I'm going to give you a minute to get all of this copied down onto your graph paper. All right, so how many numbers occurred in the interval of 0 to 3? How many? I've got, let's count them. I've got 1. Do you see where I'm marking them out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No, 14. All right, so 14, I write a frequency of 14. Anybody get that one right? There were 14 numbers that occurred between 0 and 3. All right, now what about 4 to 7? How many numbers occur between the interval of 4 to 7? So let's go through and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. So I do 9. All right, now I want you to try the last two intervals. How many numbers occur between 8 and 11 and 12 and 15? All right, so how many between 8 and 11?
7.
7, very good. How many between 12 and 15?
4.
4, very good. Okay, so now I have all the data I need to make my histogram. My intervals are going to be my category, and my frequency is going to be my quantity, or my vertical column. So right underneath your frequency table, or right next to it, depending on how much space you have, I want you to go ahead and set up a histogram. All right, now, like I said, our horizontal axis is where we label our intervals. Okay, so go ahead and label your intervals. Now we need to decide what is our interval going to be over here on our frequency. I know I have to start with 0. Am I going to go by 1s? Am I going to go by 2s, 5s, 10s? What do you think? How do I figure that out? I need to go back to my frequency table, right? And my numbers range from 4 up to 14. So what do you think you can go by?
4.
I'll go by 2s. Go by 2s, okay? I wouldn't go by anything bigger than 2s just because it leaves too much guess room. All right, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. And what's the one thing I'm forgetting on these? I always have to have my grid lines. Very good. Okay, so make sure you've got those grid lines. And now we're ready to graph. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and graph our intervals. So I want to give you a minute to finish setting up your histogram. What was my frequency for the interval 0 to 3? It was 14, so I'm going to go all the way up to 14. And notice where my far line is. It's right between the intervals. So it's clear that this column is directly above the interval 0 to 3. What's easy to do on a histogram is to smash all of them together because they have to be touching. And then our intervals are all spread out, and I don't know which one is which. Okay? All right, and then I'm going to shade it in. So just shade it in either with your pencil, or if you have a highlighter, you can use that. Now notice what I do for the next interval. I'm going to go straight off of that line that we're going to share. And it's 9, so it's just below the 10, and I'm going to shade it in. They are touching. But notice that it's still directly above the interval that I'm graphing. Make sure that you make it wide enough so it's directly above it. Okay, again, this line right here should be about midway between your two intervals. Okay? What was our frequency of 8 to 11? 7. So I'm going to go down to 7. And then my last one was down to 4. And I'm going to shade them in. Alright, okay, so that's how we do a histogram. In order to do a histogram, we have to have a frequency table. We cannot do a histogram without a frequency table. Alright, so I want to go ahead and do one more. I want you to turn in your books to page 131. Your turn now. Numbers 1 and 2. Your turn now, numbers 1 and 2. I'm giving you the intervals. I want you to fill in the rest of this frequency chart, and then we'll do the histogram. All right, so we're going to take about 5 minutes to fill in the rest of this frequency chart. All right, what's the frequency for the interval of 16 to 20? 2. What's the frequency for 21 to 25? 4. What about 26 to 30?
4.
What about 31 to 35?
5.
And 36 to 40?
2.
All right, so now that I have my frequencies, now that I have my frequencies, I can go now and do my histogram. Okay, so we're going to set it up. Did you do intervals of 1?
Yes.
Okay, don't go by any more than 1. We're just going up to 5. Okay, so just 0 through 5. Set up our set up our categories. Now, what's the one thing I'm forgetting? What's the one thing I'm forgetting here? What did I forget to do? My grid lines. Okay, you got to make sure you have your grid lines. And now you're ready to graph your histogram. Make sure you have it set up like this. If you did it wrong, go back and fix it. All right, so again, your columns should be touching. You should have them shaded in. And that should be your histogram. Does yours look like that? Yeah. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Does it look like that? All right, very good. Now, make sure that your intervals are directly underneath your columns. Are they?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Okay, and if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for histograms.